Welcome to the Social Podcast. Are you ready? Let's go. And hello, welcome to the Social Podcast. I'm your host, Mona Cedillo. Thank you for listening. This is what we call a pre-launch episode. We're going to be introducing you to some of the co-hosts that I'm going to be having on here. There are so many people right now, either on TV, YouTube, podcast, that are spewing words of hate. And so I wanted to be able to have a space where people of reason can come together to have conversations that are going to better ourselves, right? Sometimes I'm going to have people on here that you don't like. Sometimes I'll have people on here that I don't like. The whole point is to have this time to talk about issues, to talk about things that are happening within our communities around the country, maybe even around the world that affect us. During COVID, I got into a really bad habit of isolating. And so I want to be able to use this platform to get us connected, to remind us that we are not alone. I also wanted to have this podcast to introduce you to people that are doing good work in the community. I don't want this podcast to be just about me and my opinion. I wanted to be able to have people on here from within the community, from around the country that are living life just like you and me every day. I also want to use this podcast to promote music, local music. Music is my medicine. It is absolutely therapeutic for me. And that being said, let's jump into it. Let's meet our first co-host. She teaches sociology over at CCD. I'm very excited to welcome Rachel to the podcast.
Thanks, Mona. I'm glad to be here.
I'm really glad you're here. I'm excited because I know that we've talked a lot of times in person and in passing, and you just seem really insightful. You seem like you're very aware of situations, and you see the urgency and the importance of knowing truth and actually empowering others.
I feel like there is a real urgency. I feel
Mhm.
like we're at this point where the sky is falling. There's a precipice of where we're at in both education and the environment. There's so many intersections, it's crazy. And so I really need an outlet to be able to share this information with so that maybe, I'm not telling people what to do in a lot of ways. I am telling people this is the information. It bears the conversation. It bears the conversation and a much more nuanced conversation than what mainstream media has to offer.
For me myself, I just feel like that is problematic, and I'm surprised that there are not a lot of people that are, turning tables about it, because I think that for me, it's scary and it's not okay that there are businesses, corporations whose main goal is to make a profit. They are the ones who are getting to decide what we know and when we know it.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that the more voices that we have that are real people and speaking real truth, that a better chance that at least some of us have with not completely submitting to this crazy machine.
Right. Absolutely. Because of all of the systemic nature of
Mhm.
all these processes and this, colonization, white supremacy, all of this is baked into just the United States fabric.
There's not a single state that isn't experiencing some sort of battle, some sort
Right.
of oppression. I wanted to be able to get people connected. I wanted to be able to bring people forward that, that are making a difference, that they're getting involved in the hopes of not only helping them get support, but knowing that there's a really solid good chance that there's at least one or two people out there that are going to listen to the story or listen to the conversation and say, that's what's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And then hear about how what this person did. Like, how did they resolve it? What did they do to provide a solution, and get ideas? Because I think that's a big thing that COVID did, is it isolated a lot of people, and we're still kind of isolated. And I think the fact that our news, in whatever fashion, is filtered, so we don't hear everything. We don't hear all the stories. We're only hearing like I feel like we're only hearing about 10%,
Oh
you
yeah.
know?
Oh
So
yeah.
that's why I wanted to do this was to again to get people connected, to remind people they're not alone. And I was talking to brother Jeff yesterday, and I told him, I said, that's one of the reasons why I love your show that you do. I love your the cultural center that you have. I love your work because you are daily reminding people that they're not alone, and you're talking about things that need to be talked about.
The whole message, the whole voice, and it's not like right now it is so disturbing that our two main stories in the media are Kanye and Kim and Pete and the Ukraine and Russia. Like how are those two stories
Yeah.
the things I mean, the diametrically opposed kind of camps that they live in, but they
Uh-huh.
are the ones that are literally in the media spotlight. Just to me, it's the United States of distraction.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Always, always. I'm so glad you said that because for a second I thought maybe it was just me when I when I see people even on my way to work, I see flags, I see signs, I see yard signs, I people posting stuff on social media, we and you know what? I get it. We don't want countries at war. I get that. But it bothers me to see so many people that are just like this country needs peace. And I think, what about the people of color in your own country? What
yes,
about our peace? What about us being heard? What about Native Americans and their land being preserved and not taken? Like how hypocritical for some people to be like, "Oh, the Russia shouldn't be like that," but then you're living in a country that started that way. Okay? So before you want to go save another country and save another people, why don't you look in your neighborhood and find the people that need assistance, whether it be company or maybe somebody needs a meal, maybe somebody needs, a conversation, maybe there's a local school that could use a tutor, but to see people do this performance, and I feel like it is a performance,
oh, totally.
is frustrating. It's really frustrating. Like, why can't you all be rallying every day for people of color?
Why are you sending money to Ukraine when you have a homeless person that you stumble over in 5 points?
Right there, gentrification. If you care
Yep.
so much for people, then why? Why are you overcharging for real estate? And why are you overcharging for mortgages and rent? And why are you hiding behind the mask of, well, that's the market?
Right. No, that's
No,
not. That
I
is a
don't buy that.
completely made up. It's a completely made up thing. Completely. You get to pick the price that you're going to charge somebody.
Yeah.
Nobody's holding a gun to your head to make you raise your rent $300.
Hmm.
Nobody.
Yeah.
You're doing that for yourself, for
Yeah,
your own
exactly.
greed.
Exactly. And so that's what I think about is, I see, especially in Denver, you see these empty warehouses, you see these empty buildings, you see these homes with all these for sale signs. And I
Hmm.
think if you really cared so much about your fellow man or woman, then why are you exploiting? Why are you taking? Why are you oppressing people in your own country, in your own state, in your own city, on your own street?
You're also disconnected. And until we really understand that we are all connected, all of these problems are going to continue to get exacerbated. We are all connected. It's all connected.
Well, and it's really interesting with you saying that because did you ever see that video? I think it's maybe about 4 or 5 years old, but it was this social experiment that people did, and they basically got a group of people. I think maybe 30 people, possibly, but they got them all in a room, and they had asked them. This panel had asked them, um, what nationality are you? How do you feel about this certain nationality or certain race? And it was interesting how a good chunk of them, of course, had their biases. And so they said, would you be okay to do a DNA test, some sort of lineage?
Hmm.
And they all said, yeah. So the test results came back and they found out that, practically everyone in the room was related to another person. And that some people even discovered that one of the cultures that they disliked, they were a part of. Have you seen that one?
I don't know if I've seen that one. There's so many of the forces of, the economics and the politics. All of those forces will eventually impact you. They will
Mhm,
always impact you. So I think it's just really short-sighted when people think, "Oh, I'm not affected. I
mhm.
don't have to vote. I don't have to care."
Well, I think it's interesting how many people think that the only time to vote, if they vote, is every 4 years,
Right?
you know? And I've gotten into so many conversations, borderline, you know, lectures about it's every year.
Yep.
It's every year.
People literally don't know what each of those levels do. They don't know the job description of a city council person. They
Mhm,
don't know exactly what those people do and what they're actually voting on and what their role is in society. And because they don't know that, they're disengaged, and that's been really disastrous for us because
mhm.
now we have people who are in office who don't actually think that they work for us.
And just asking them, if you really don't like who it is that becomes a candidate every 4 years, then you really need to be paying attention to who you're voting for every year. They're the ones who are saying, yes, we're going to go ahead and let Trump, be a candidate. We're going to back him up. We're going to support him. They're the ones opening the door, holding the door for these people to come in.
Breaking it down is important. It's
Yeah.
important. Information and education should not be, especially about your ability to engage in your government. That
Mhm.
isn't just for elitists.
And I think, honestly, I think that's intentional. I
Oh,
think it's
absolutely.
intentional that that's not explained thoroughly, that it's not, just dived into more, that it's really more thoroughly explained to people so that even something as simple as just making sure before people graduate high school, they're going to become an adult. So hey, this is going to be part of your life journey. Or if they want to be able to support somebody, know how to support someone when they start working and start bringing in that money, they can decide for themselves, I'm going to use my some of my paycheck to support this candidate. So I'm glad that we're going to be a part of that solution, a part of a fountain of knowledge, I hope.
Woohoo! Let's do it.
Yeah, for
It sounds good.
sure.
I I wanted to just tell you thank you for doing this, for being part of the change and not being part of the problem.
I'm trying.
I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for you and our community and we're just really lucky to have you.
So thank you again, Rachel. I look forward to working together and producing some pretty powerful stuff.
Sounds good.
All right, all right. And that was our co host, Rachel Lehman. Another co host that we are going to have is a musician, and he is a rocket scientist and legit rock star. Seriously, he's the whole package here, folks. I'm very excited that he was on board to not only write the song for the podcast, the theme, but he's also agreed to be a co host. So, without any further delay, everyone say hello to Armando Lopez.
Hi, Mona. Happy to be here. Thanks for having
Hey.
me. Yeah, yeah. I feel like you're, out here with a similar mindset of looking to have an impact on what the world around us, and not only remark on it and observe it, but try to think about, what we can do about it. And so, in that sense, you have conversations about the state of the world, which is oftentimes, super tragic, and it's important to bring to the table and keep reminding people just through social interactions and being out in social situations that it doesn't have to be this way.
hmm I feel like whenever we talk, whether it be online or in person, you tend to be more optimistic. Um, and that's one of the things that I thought would be really great about having you be a part of this was because you do. I'm older, so I've tended to see it a little bit more. So there are times that I'm just kind of like, well, that's just how it is. I'm
Mm,
kind of like jaded. But whenever I see you, you seem to be in this motion of trying to find a solution, trying to find hope. Um, Despite whatever statistics or data that we find.
right.
What are you hoping to bring to these conversations?
Yeah, I think optimism is definitely one of my core values with how I interface with the world and world events, and bringing that to the local stage, because we are, it escalates pretty quickly. You go out in the world and you see this exceedingly complex system of, history and current events, and people that seemingly can't get along, age old prejudices,
Mhm.
biases, isms and schisms, and it
Yeah.
seems so complex and so incapable of affecting. And then, you bring it down to the local level, and I think without too much of a stretch, or too much, you don't have to strain very hard your imagination to see that the events happening at the local level, especially in a city like Denver, especially in a place where there's people from all over the place, kind of a melting pot here in the Midwest. We have,
Mhm.
we are living examples of these things that are happening on the world stage, at a bigger level, at the national and international level. And we see, like, just in the events that happen through the people that we know, performers, entertainers, artists, activists, leaders, um, all these people are human too. And so they get a platform, they become public figures in their own right. We have a chance then at practicing things like restorative justice for real. We have a chance at changing the history of retributive, retribution, vengeance based justice that our entire legal system is based on.
Mhm.
The entire prison system is just based on punishment. We have all these questions of, like, okay, what, the work on imagining what different could be like. And I think people who are capable of that imagination, who are asking those questions, you might feel the same way, but I feel like we have some kind of, like, obligation or calling to do so, if we're capable, because a lot of people, I feel like, haven't been given the opportunity to even imagine something different.
So that was the goal, was to bring encouragement and bring hope by sharing good work that people are doing, you know? And the good work can come from art, music, legislation,
Mhm.
science, you name it. For me, working in media, I got to a point where I realized I I want to be able to know when I'm all said and done that I can look at my kids and say, you know what, I did everything I could for, to have a better place for you,
Yeah.
growing up. You're optimistic with a lot of the work that you do. Where does that come from?
I've ever since I was young, my parents kind of implanted in me this desire to achieve and to overcome and to just seek out, these great unsolvable problems. Some
Yeah.
some people are so economically oppressed and depressed and crushed, and that they could care less. They already, to them, the world's already ended. I actually went to school, studied material science for a number of reasons, but one of those was to, be part of the solution. I did see some of the most brilliant people, in on the planet, working very, very hard every day to come up with solutions for a number of things, right? Energy, pulling carbon dioxide out of the air, and almost feeling like I have to be optimistic,
Yeah.
There's a there's actually a Facebook meme page I really like. It's called Ominous Positivity. And it's got memes that will say things like, um, "You are gonna get better, you have no choice," or, like, it's like, and it's kinda wild to think about, because it's like, a lot of healers, feel like we're on this earth to heal, but that's, and we're carrying generational trauma,
Yeah.
and that's a big piece of conversation around justice work, right? Is
Mhm.
generational trauma. To move that healing forward is to believe that everyone's capable of healing. I think is its own kind of core optimistic outlook. Probably those are the main two. Is yeah, feeling like I don't want to be a nihilist. I don't want to give up, or I don't want to be a hedonist. I don't want to live every day. Not to say that doesn't sound fun, but I don't want to live every day for myself. I just feel like I'm capable of doing this healing work and shouldering the burden that requires.
When you were sharing about, how you're choosing the attitude of you're still going to keep your head up. I was thinking about this. I wish I could remember, but there was this movie I watched. Gosh, I think it was like late 80s. It was all about a teacher that was to overlook this group of kids. I think it was a choir or theater. The story of the play, and it actually was a musical, was that this island was sinking. And so some people left and some people stayed. And for some reason, these people decided that they are going to celebrate life still. Like this is happening. I don't, if I'm going to die, I don't want to die anywhere else. This is where I want to be with my people, my family on this land. It was
Mm,
really neat because at the same time that the teacher was trying to get these kids to understand what was happening so they could, get in touch with the character,
mm,
the school was getting ready to close. The school district was going to shut the school down, and it was high school kids. They realized that, wow, this school's going to be done after this. Like, this is literally our last year here ever. And it was just so emotional because they're singing their last song when they're just talking about how we're going to celebrate life, and we're going to dance, and we're going to sing, and we're going to play instruments, and we're
mhm.
still going to celebrate, because the life we've had so far, it hasn't been bad. It's been good. And they said, you know what, I'd rather go down singing and embracing each other.
Wow.
And I thought about that when you were talking.
Yeah, that's yeah. I think there's a point. I think a lot of people are like maybe not in a position to choose how they react. Um, just because I think there's a certain level of like self-examination
Mhm.
that has to take place before you can make a conscious choice as to how you're going to deal with certain things. But when you are in that place, I do think you are allowed like a very conscious choice of like how to live your life and what to do with the gifts or challenges that you're presented with.
I wanted to ask you, I feel like every time um, I turn around, you're introducing some sort of instrument or some sort of technology, and
Mhm.
you're just jamming out to it. Is there an instrument yet that you are jonesing for that you don't have just yet?
I kind of went crazy this last year, especially, and just got everything that I would need for this foreseeable future. Obviously, that list never ends. The more you get, the more you want. I really am interested in something called a talk box for a synthesizer. It's very like
Oh, yeah.
80s
Mhm.
sound. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
What was with that big giant, looked like the biggest saxophone I've ever seen in my life. What's up?
yeah, I do have a bass saxophone.
Is that what that is?
Yeah,
It's
it's
huge.
wonderful. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I got that from a Facebook group, a saxophone Facebook group, and I literally just was opportunistic and I shouted out. I was like, "Hey, who has a bass sax in here?" And the guy who responded looked at, he checked out Brothers of Brass, and
Uh-huh.
he had a bass sax that had been sitting in his basement for like it's the sax is from the 1910s,
What?
and it was yeah, and then learned about the history, and that big saxophone, believe it or not, was actually the first saxophone that was made, the first type of saxophone, I should say.
Yeah.
Um, because when the guy invented the saxophone, he invented it to give the bass, the low reeds, some more punch because they
Huh.
weren't loud enough.
So when you guys first started, did you already know that that's kind of the route that you guys were going to go?
Um, well, yeah, when I first met Khalil, I had already been doing marches with No Enemies from the
Mhm.
Flowbots, and yeah, we were out there in 2015 after Ferguson, kind of in the early days of Black Lives Matter,
Mhm.
and it was clear, that I could bring a saxophone and be acoustically loud and help support, you know, support people in the streets marching. And then George Floyd happened, and that really all came together in a big way. We were a little more tempered as an ensemble, a little more matured, so we had a better time really just playing full walls of sound that could support the movement. And we did stop short of, going out there and playing during utter chaos and, rubber bullets flying and stuff. We we did stop short of that, but pretty much, yeah, every weekend, and a lot of weeknights we were out there just supporting the marches and rallies and Mhm.
I lived in Minnesota for a couple of years, and so I
Mm.
know people in Minneapolis, and this one of my friends, I forgot who it was, sent me a little video clip of exactly like you were saying, like you could see the gas cans being thrown, pellets,
Mhm.
and then somebody on the side is playing like that Bumblebee song, you know, like
Yeah,
full on guy's got a saxophone and he's like hunkered down
yeah.
behind the shields and he's playing this song.
Oh man, there was some great footage of players in Portland outside the
Mm,
Federal Building,
yeah.
and there was lots of tear gas flying, and they were just making music.
That was like
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Now in the age of the smartphone, you're seeing a lot more moments like that captured
yeah,
of
for real.
musicians on the front line. And it's crazy to think too, like in revolutionary times, like they would just have musicians out there getting
Yeah,
just shot up, like
for real.
and just playing the drums of war, the literal drums of war, not the
Yeah, that's pretty
yeah.
wild. So I wanted to ask you too, because I noticed that, I mean, you got your brothers of brass, but then you also every once in a while you drop, a video of you playing a song and
Mhm,
um during UMS, you just like randomly would pop up on the stage somewhere and I'm like, "What is going
mhm.
on?"
So yeah, sit-ins are a common
Yeah.
occurrence in my life for sure.
You are a scientist. And you don't even know how, when I was much younger, I tried to learn how to play the piano. I tried to learn how to play the guitar, and I just couldn't get it.
Mm,
And math has always been challenging for me. And I just remember between math teachers, science teachers, and music teachers, them all saying pretty much the same thing, that math is music, music, math. They go together hand in hand. And you're the first person I know that's a scientist and a musician. Like you are walking proof that they are connected.
definitely connected.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a whole podcast in and of itself. So the science I do is mostly material science. I studied specifically solids and the way they form. So crystalline materials, metals, what makes matter what it is, and energy and light and all
Mhm,
those things. It's really beautiful. I work on lithium ion battery systems, which are a climate technology. They're going to be a big piece of getting us off oil. Different improvements in the different parts of the battery all are cooperative. They all work together. They're complementary.
mhm,
So all these different companies working on all these different improvements, they can all go together and make the lithium ion battery much much better than anything we've seen today. So even the electric cars of today that are as good as they are will only
mhm,
get better, and they're going to get better a lot faster in the future, and getting off of fossil fuels and wrestling our energy economy out from these sadistic dinosaurs. Is they When I met Khalil, though, he was like, "Man, we could like just try this out. We can." At the time, I was playing with another band that was not really doing anything for me creatively, and
mhm.
were not letting me kind of be myself. And he was like, "Hey, look, you could be the star of the show and make all this money in only this much time." And it was just too fun. So I just ended up just taking time off school and traveling the country, playing music, and yeah, don't regret it at all. It was amazing.
I'm a firm believer, especially for the creative ones. We always have to be evolving. We always have to have something new, something that we're doing that's different. Otherwise, I know for me, I get stagnant, I get depressed, I just get in this funk,
Mhm.
and that's just not for me. And so, and I see that with you, like you're at least that's my perception is that you're
Yeah.
continuously trying and growing and
Oh, yeah. I have ADHD is what it is.
Aha. All right then.
Yeah, I don't know what
Different hashtag.
I don't even know what the answer is anymore. You make a TikTok dance for it or something.
For real.
Way more damaging in a lot of ways, but Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene can just, like, roll up in there and scream about adrenochrome or whatever they're doing. It's
Yeah. Well, and that's a whole other conversation with Lauren
Mhm.
Boebert because she was like on it as far as accusing, certain people of sexual assault and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
And then, those of us, we go do a deep dive into her. We find out that her husband
Right.
has a record for exposing
Exposing
himself
himself.
to youth.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
And just, continuing to unpack this wild world, and everything that makes humans what we are, social podcast.
And that was Armando Lopez. Again, we send him much love and many thanks for hooking us up with the intro theme to this podcast. Our next co host is someone that is very well known in the Denver area. She is an award winning individual. She does fantastic work with media, and I am super honored that she is on board for being a co host. Everyone, fam, friends, let's meet Summer Nettles.
Hi, Mona. I'm so excited about this podcast. I'm so excited. Yes, and I think so many people have gifts, and
Yeah.
depthy and verbally like the vocabulary in a Coates piece is like what you know
Right.
um, and I think that that's very valuable in especially in terms of being a black writer
Mm,
and making it very clear
right.
that you're no less than anyone else, regardless of what they may think, what they may assign. And then also, though, the style of writing required of someone who's covering news, which is like, can you understand this at an eighth grade level? Like, that's
Mhm.
where I'm going.
Right.
And I don't know that everybody understands that. So it is.
Mm.
It's a beautiful thing to have real life people saying real life things.
At least with you, you created your space. You have your own company, the Greater Purpose Media, and you do your work. And everything that you do, you're not leaning on an organization. It's like you're just, from what I see with you, you're creating this work. You're doing it. You're not waiting for somebody to make this space for you. You're just moving forward from what I see. And I love that. I love that about you.
Oh my gosh, thank you. That's amazing. Like, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it is hard. I think giving yourself permission to do what your heart is telling you needs to be done
Yes.
is almost an everyday thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and the day though, it's kind of like, okay, you are the brand. So so you go to the gym, not
Right.
so much because you're going to like be spelt after this, but
Mhm.
because in order to lift a camera, in order to chase a story, you're gonna have to like do cardio, sis. Like that's what's gonna have to happen.
Yeah.
And then, and then also there are days like where it's with an op-ed in my mind and I have like the beginning, I have the end.
Mhm.
It's the middle. Yeah. And so it's really giving myself permission to be vulnerable at this level. So even though it is like every time I start writing this op-ed, I want to like eat 6 slices of cake and like, oh, it's gonna hurt so much to write that. I still am like the
Yeah.
vulnerability. What you show people here is going to empower them and it's going to articulate things that folks in the House and the Senate do
Mhm.
not even know because
Right.
unless you've experienced it, you don't even have any idea of how how crazy and how well crafted this system is to get people out of their homes.
I just want to say, like, do it, because
Yay.
because that story needs to be told, you know. And I've been talking to a few people, obviously, and the whole situation with the HOA is very much like what's happening with their teachers, what's happening with just various different other spaces where we're finding places where people of color have, you know, one way or another, whether it be through a degree, they own a house, they own a business, but we've done our work. We've done our work. We've stepped up. We've saved the money. We bought this. We invested whatever. And the powers that be are literally snatching it away from us. To me, okay, I'm just going to say this, that as a person of color, it can get me discouraged because we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And people are still trying to say, no, you can't come to this table.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's not about like you didn't read the agreement, so you're a bad human. You
Yeah.
know, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. And then there have been narratives perpetuated as well, right? Like, so like do you remember a couple years ago there was that narrative about like millennials don't want to buy houses?
Yes.
What? What? Yeah, they don't want to buy houses because they want to be mobile. They want to be able to move. They want to, how about they won't be able to buy a house because they literally are prohibited by their student loan debt.
Exactly. Thank you.
Right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
yeah, like you're asking these people, and again, and I say this all the time, we live in a shame-based capitalist society.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just capitalism, it's shame-based capitalism. And in
Yep.
order for this capitalism to thrive, it requires people to hide things that they're ashamed of. So it's very easy to get a narrative absent talking about student loan debt,
Mm-hmm.
because people are ashamed that they owe money
Yeah.
that they can't pay. So
Mhm.
of course they're going to come up with another layer of reasons why they wouldn't invest in one of the greatest returns, an opportunity for returns in your life, right? Like
Right.
it had nothing to do with, I'm hard pressed to believe that it had anything to do with at the level that it was given to us, like this is pervasive amongst millennials. I really don't think so.
And that was Summer Nettles, one of our co-hosts for the podcast. We do have at least 4 more other individuals that are going to be joining us. I'm going to go ahead and do what is going to be an ongoing habit of mine, which is sharing underground local music. I seriously dig this song. It's called Disturbed Suburbia, and it is by Moonwalker.
You never will go hungry, you never go astray, you're never going anywhere, so just pack it in and stay. We'll pay off the best college and we'll get you the best degree. And when you learn to listen, you'll play a little cog in a big machine with all your fears kept behind a wall, a white picket fence. We'll make your world feel small, so we can keep you there for a lifetime. Where you been? Come on. We all get off work early, but still come home so late. We chalk up our contributions